Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of MotorLat's English Language News Roundup. I am waiting, as always, for David, who is going to discuss a few topics with me today. I see the first two people joining us, and I see David, so I'm just request to connect with him. Hello, David.
How are you, B?
I'm fine, and how are you?
What's the audio quality like? And what's the picture quality?
No, it's perfect, and I can see your face in full, so just keep it this way. It's going to be perfect, I think.
Lovely stuff. The audio is not very clear for me. Am I coming through clear for you?
Oh, let me just check. Perhaps I was moving my hand around the microphone. Is it better now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, that's better. So we finally have a calendar. First 8 races, 6 venues. How did you react this morning once you read the news?
First of all, it was shock, basically. I was one of the people who did not think we would get here, especially seeing Hungary and Silverstone together. I think they've done really well there.
Yeah, very well put. Also with relaxing of the measures for quarantine entering the UK. Actually, it was a big headache for Liberty Media, and they worked closely with the UK government to make it happen, to make it possible. So it's a great result for Formula One, for the fans as well, who were expecting actually to see some on-track action, although they are going to watch from home. So as I was reading on F1's website, I was reading some of the points that they want to ensure in case there is a positive case in the paddock. That's a very sensitive topic at the moment. So it was very interesting to see that everyone must keep a 2-meter distance from one another. How do you think this is going to be possible and feasible?
Yeah, I've got reference on my phone here, what they released today. So we have the 5 steps to safe racing,
Exactly.
which F1 released, and ongoing testing, which we always knew would be coming. The closed events, which disappointed a lot of fans around the world. The minimal personnel, which makes us journalists think, who's
We
going
are
to be
not
allowed at the
allowed.
party?
Indeed, yeah.
And then isolated travel, the chartered flights, which Formula One's green footprint and the chartered flights. Not sure about that.
Yeah, they kind of
And
clash
like you
at the
said,
moment,
social.
but yeah, they kind of clash at the moment, but
You can't
still,
have.
yes, if we were going to go back to racing, we have to go right, against our own beliefs, but still, if racing is number one priority, I think that we do what we have to do.
Exactly. I mean, you can't have everything. The social distancing will be much easier. Like we've said before, the press conferences will be a Zoom meeting or an online app or something. We're hoping the drivers will feel more relaxed. But social media recently hasn't done the drivers much favor in the calling out that Lewis Hamilton did.
Oh yeah, absolutely. With the ongoing protests regarding Floyd's murder, he's always displayed some kind of sensitivity and sensibility towards global cases and problematics. So that is very brave of him. He's always set the tone as a leader of a division in calling out the drivers, encouraging them to speak up. So I think that is a true attitude of a champion. That's a true display of his champion traits. So that was very good for social media. That was very good for the other drivers as well, who got the opportunity to speak up, even though he was basically slamming them from being silent over the past few days.
But I thought that was really nice as well, the way that Charles Leclerc kind of acknowledged it and was kind of, I haven't voiced my opinion. I didn't really think I had the place to. And it wasn't kind of like they were trying to just be like, oh, we have also thought of doing this. There was a clear connection to the comments of Lewis. And I think that was very respectful from them. And it has got to the point where people were thinking, if I say something, I'm jumping on the bandwagon. And if I say nothing, I'm silent. Well, I always say better to be jumping on the bandwagon of what's right and take any consequence anyone dares try to send your way.
Absolutely. They were very mature indeed in jumping on the bandwagon. They did it in a classy way, I think, because, you know, they responded after being called out, and at the same time they addressed global problematic and social case. So I really think that was very positive, not only for Formula One, but for society as well. And it gets us really connected amongst all nations in the world, because in the end, that's not just an American-based problem, that's basically relatable for everyone. We do have African
Yeah.
American communities. We deal with racism on a daily basis. So we constantly are exposed to that kind of problems. So everyone should raise awareness, and it was very well put from Lewis to do so.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, whenever I quote someone, I like to always get them correctly precise. And this is what Lewis Hamilton said when he was 12 years old. I've had racist names being called to me. The first time it happened, I felt really upset. I told my mum and dad. So if anyone who dares say something like stick to racing or don't comment your things, this is something he's had his entire life. And now he's got a platform to be able to implement change. He's taken that responsibility, and the world is all the better for it.
Yeah, in a way, I think that everyone was kind of waiting for him because, you know, the problem was more direct from him. He's been dealing with this throughout his whole life. So I think that everyone was remaining silent also because, in a way, they were kind of waiting for him to speak up. I don't know if you felt the same way, but perhaps they were all waiting
They
for him
were.
to say something at least.
Yeah, I think his former teammate and his current teammate. It's very interesting how lots of people are saying Valtteri Bottas is silent at the moment, and it's his opinion, it's his choice. He can do whatever he likes. And then you've got Nico Rosberg, who announced on social media, "I'm going to take 2 days away. I'm going to do some reading. I'm going to make some informed comments, and then I'm really looking forward to what Nico Rosberg comes back with, because he is a person with a lot of following. He is a world champion who people will listen to. And I'm really looking forward to his next steps."
Yeah, I think that was very, very clever from Nico Rosberg to say that he wants to document himself before actually speaking up and sharing a message on social media, because we know how everything can be misled, misunderstood, and misinterpreted on social media. He was very sensible towards a fan of his during the lockdown. He actually made a donation because she struggled financially. She was worrying about being able to buy some foods during the lockdown. So it was a very nice gesture from him. And I'm still waiting for this kind of response because, you know, sometimes it's better not to say anything at all if you're not exactly well informed about it. So if he's going to do some reading, I would really appreciate to see what he comes up with. And regarding Valtteri Bottas' choice, I think that he's always very silent. He prefers not to expose himself too much. Even during press conferences, when they ask for personal opinions, he always goes with it. Same here. I agree with Lewis. I agree with Max. Yeah, it happened to me before because, you know, I was asking them a random question that differs from this. It was about Fernando Alonso coming back. Lewis Hamilton was very vocal on this. Max had his opinion as well. Valtteri, not so much. He said, completely agree with Lewis. And then that was it. He prefers not to speak up. Perhaps he doesn't really have an opinion on stuff, but I really respect that. Instead of saying something that was not truly heartfelt, it's better to stay silent, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. One of his sentences we've heard many times is either "I feel he said it perfectly," or "I have nothing else to add," or "I couldn't say it better." And it's like, yeah,
Indeed.
very good.
I couldn't have said better.
From one,
It was so much Valtterish. It was so much Valtterish. But
from
yeah.
from one McLaren legend in the form of Lewis Hamilton, we come to the legend that started McLaren, of course. 50 years ago today, we sadly lost Bruce McLaren, who at the incredibly young age of 32 years old passed away at Goodwood. And it's been nice to see the way he's been remembered on social media.
Absolutely. I remember 2 years ago watching the documentary. I had actually ordered a DVD about his documentary, so it was very nice to receive it on June the 2nd 2 years ago. It was a very nice way for myself to commemorate it. But always I do get notifications on social media from, you know, the first minutes at night, remembering his famous quotations. So life is not measured in years alone, but in achievement. I could have rephrased it better, but still, that's the message. And I truly think he was a pioneer in, working through your own struggles, setting up your own business. And he was an example as well in how Europe was key as a platform to grow your business and really make it to an industry, because we remember that he was a Kiwi,
Yeah, and it's so beautiful. I can see Simon Brooks of McLaren One putting the candle icon, because at 12:19 British time today, I saw real candles, I saw virtual candles on social media, and of course at the MTC, the lovely tribute that they did unveiling the life-size statue of Bruce McLaren. So it's been really nice to see the way he's been celebrated.
Absolutely. Yeah, so during this lockdown time, during these very trying times, it's always very nice to see how the motorsport community comes together when it comes to paying tribute to different figures that were very significant throughout its history. So I do always get very emotional when it comes to, celebrating the past. And that's always something very special to witness, even on social media, when we are all practicing social distancing. So we're always connected through social media, even though we're not here in person to perhaps gather around. If the lockdown hadn't existed, what would have McLaren done? Perhaps to do a very nice celebration. Perhaps at the McLaren Technology Centre, they could have organized something with the fans.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all, because we know the incredible work that the Papaya Plus McLaren group have, and the connection that they have as being so loved by McLaren, invited to the special unveiling of the vehicles, of course, special limited events that they get to go to. So no doubt they would have done something for the fans there. But I think it's the telling comparison for McLaren, of course, 50 years since the loss of their founder, and now Williams, who are desperately trying to previously keep that family name associated with the company. But as you will tell us shortly, with the history of when they floated their stocks on the market, it's changing times at Williams. They're probably going to have to become owned by someone else other than themselves. What's your take on it, B?
No, absolutely. That was very upsetting and disheartening news, as we are on the verge perhaps of losing one of the most iconic and historic teams of Formula One, because Williams is now open to fresh investment because of their financial struggles at the end of 2019. So that wasn't really a direct effect and consequence of the lockdown, which actually caused a major loss in income. But it was something prior to that, even after the advanced engineering division being sold out, being bought out. And it is going to be a major struggle, but it could be also a very nice opportunity for potential investors to come in. So actually these difficult times may open the door to new investors, and it could contribute to building a new Formula One division with new faces, rebuilding everything and rebranding and everything. So I'm very curious and open to see who is going to step up and perhaps undertake the whole brand.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what direction they go. I think previously we have had quite a carousel of drivers into Williams and out of Williams. They obviously want to hold on to George Russell, but I think Nicholas Latifi's social media presence will do him the world of good, from the brand that he's built up with Twitch, from his followers and his streaming that he's doing there, playing members of the public on Super Mario, to anyone who buys that team and would be tempted to maybe move in a driver. Nicholas Latifi is very much saying, I am my own person, I can show you what I can bring. And I think that's really impressive.
Yeah, it is actually, because he's very well aware of the importance of social media, of being, present on a global platform. So that's not just about building a brand, but that's also about building awareness for potential sponsors. So that's very important. That's also what Lando Norris did with his very colorful personality on Twitch as well. So I think that's part of the trend of the drivers nowadays, and that's very positive to see, because even though in the paddock we are not allowed to see the true colors of a driver, we are on other platforms such as Twitch, for example. So that's very promising for Williams to see that such a solid and strong presence is already part of the team. And as for investors, I'm very curious to see what is going to be Nikita Mazepin's father's next move, because we know that he's on the lookout for a team to buy. And he's been previously linked with Renault, with Racing Point in case Aston Martin is going to buy the shares of Mercedes, which was, you know, regarded as a real scenario last week from German sources. I was really surprised to see that, but still, it was such an interesting scenario that I really wanted to delve into it, and I wrote like 2 stories on MotorLat last week. I really suggest you would read them, everyone. But yeah, in that case, Mr. Mazepin would be interested in buying Racing Point in case it doesn't get rebranded Aston Martin. So that would be very, very interesting to see what his choice is going to be.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where they're going to go with as far as Racing Point and the speculation there. But I thought the Daimler's Group announcement for coming out and saying, "Oh, we're not leaving Formula One. Toto Wolff is not going anywhere." We've obviously written a fair few column inches speculating that, and Daimler have just kind of turned up and said, "No, not at all."
But I don't fully believe that, because, you know, the interest is very high. Even though Toto Wolff said that it was just a personal financial investment, the fact that he bought some stakes at Aston Martin, I think that something is brewing. So it will lead to something else for him and Aston Martin. Also, his close relationship with Lawrence Stroll is very telling in that regard. So I truly believe that something is building up and they will eventually become business partners on the short term.
Nice. You're determined. You're hanging your opinion on that one quite firmly. I like it.
Well,
I
given
like
the
that you're sticking true
accuracy
to
of
it.
the German press, I am not too convinced in distrusting them. So that is my opinion, and I think that we will see more of this in the future.
Well, I think for me, I mean, we were just commenting about how social media gives us an insight into the drivers. Toto Wolff and his social media, as shown through his wife, of course, Susie, he's become this family man, which he always was, of course, but he's now spending so much time at home. He has all the look of someone who's kind of thinking, yeah, there's a lot more to my life than Formula One, which many people would probably think he was just all about Mercedes. All the stuff I'm seeing is this relaxed person who's kind of ready for the next stage of their life.
So do you think he is considering sort of a retirement?
I do.
You do? Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I wouldn't be surprised at all if one more year at the top with Mercedes, and then handing over to someone else or becoming more of an advisor role. We know the huge bond he had with Niki Lauda, and the confidant that he had in him. And of course, he's got a wonderful team around him, but the job is always going to be that little bit different. We can never understate the role that Niki Lauda had in getting Lewis Hamilton to come to Mercedes. Some of his strategy calls, some of his very diplomatic press comments when he would not blame Rosberg, not blame Hamilton, and said he just bashed the pair of them together. He's definitely a loss to Toto Wolff, and so it's very interesting. What is Space Cowboy saying? Definitively a man with options. Yes, Space Cowboy. He is certainly a man with a lot of options on the table.
Yeah, because also he has the option of becoming a member of the advisory team on the advisory board at Daimler Group or Aston Martin, whatever the scenario is going to be. So he perhaps will step out and step down of his role as team principal and will become more of an investor. So he will be out of the picture from the managing side of the team, but still he's going to be involved perhaps in the business and financial side of it. And then there is the retirement option. So he's definitely got plenty of choices to take if he wants to.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people forget, that Toto Wolff started out with investment and seeing an opportunity and striking while the iron is hot, we would say. Like, he really saw something, he threw his weight behind it, and he knows what he's doing with his money, he knows what he's doing with his time, and he has certainly got the experience. But
Yes,
what we won't have the experience of, any fans in the first 8 races. There will be empty grandstands. What do we think that will look like on television?
No, absolutely. It will look very, very sad for everyone, I think. But still, I think that the FOM is going to do a very good job in hiding that side of it, focusing on racing, just perhaps getting more color signs on the frame this time around, since he's always been very vocal about the fact that he's going to get forgotten during the races. So this time, hopefully, they will focus more on him rather than empty grandstands, for example. So it would be obviously, it would be very interesting to see the effect, the sound effect we will get without the fans, you know, in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
No background noises. And as for, you know, fans' activities, so the weekends are going to be already shorter than normal. So no fans on Thursday and no scenes. Also, the pictures are going to look less colorful because, you know, famous photographers always take inspiration from fans on Thursday, where they actually roam around the circuit, and there is going to be nothing of it. So it's going to be a very sad scenario. But I read on F1 press release, as I was going through it earlier today, that they really hope to bring fans back towards the end of the year. We know that Brazil absolutely 100% wants to take the fans on the grandstands, because they've actually undertaken a whole different approach compared to the rest of the world. They have pretty much denied the magnitude of the issue. They do not respect and honor the social distancing policies and precautions. So it's going to be very interesting how Formula One is going to deal with, you know, with a line that the government has chosen for Brazil. And I truly hope that for the last 3 races, which are expected to be 2 in Bahrain and 1 at Abu Dhabi, where the virus is actually improving, you know, the situation is improving in terms of the index of infected people. Perhaps they are a couple of weeks ahead compared to Europe, at least Italy and Spain, who were the first countries who entered a full lockdown. So probably, in case the situation keeps improving at this rate, I would see fans coming back in Bahrain and Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, that would be marvelous. I wouldn't be surprised if, because we know how much F1 needs money, the Bundesliga, of course, for when they had German football start kicking off again, no pun intended, there were fans cutouts in the crowd, and people paid to be able to have their face shown. So whether F1 does something similar, way of bringing in some capital by having the faces in the stands, who knows? But having watched a lot of races recently, I am not going to miss the fact that they keep on cutting away after a good overtake to the fans. And it's like, I'd like to actually see the cars. It's like in the days of when the NBA, there would be a great shot and they would have it scored, a 3-pointer, and then the camera would look at the fans. But you want to see the teammates celebrating. You want to see them jumping up and down. We want to see how the car responds once it's been overtaken. And we've all seen many times when it's like, oh, hang on, he's tackling him again. But we miss it because we're watching the fans. So I won't miss that at all, B. Not at all.
Oh, yeah, that's a very nice way to see that, because, you know, sometimes we lose the focus once the move is made. So it would be great to see how the dynamics work once the car is overtaken. And also, it would be even more insightful for the team. You know, sometimes they cut out all the images in the garage on how mechanics react, and sometimes it's absolutely hilarious. So I'm very looking forward to seeing how they're going to react. So that's a further insight that we're going to get, and that's very beneficial for us at home, at least.
That's a really good point. I mean, we think of the wonderful photo of the Red Bull racing team with their mechanics literally jubilant at seeing Max Verstappen when he overtook Charles. And we're probably going to actually have cutaways to that. I think you're absolutely right. We're going to see a lot more of the mechanics. And when they are doing so many double headers and triple headers, I think they deserve a lot more screen time. It is a big undertaking to do these 8 races in, I believe it's 10 weeks, 8 races in 10 weeks. Incredible.
Yes, absolutely. And Monza is the last one, which is at least definitive at the moment. So the contract was extended 1 year further. So we're going to race at Monza until 2025. The announcement was actually made by the mayor of the city, Dario Levi. And I think that that was massive because we were on the verge of having the race jeopardized, as we know how important the Tifosi and the crowd is for Monza. That's kind of the quintessential element for Monza. But still, that's a very strong statement and message that we are sending. Actually, Lombardy, the region of Lombardy, is one of the worst affected from the virus even today. They still have a very high rate of new cases reported daily. And in case the situation improves by September, that is going to be a massive message of hope that we are going to get from the region itself. Because even at the moment here in Italy, everyone is very reluctant towards heading back to Milan and to those areas which are still heavily affected. So in case the Grand Prix is done and it is 100% safe to do so, it's going to be massive also for our nation as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite impressive because, of course, the location of the Monza track is so in the heart of the population. I think the Tifosi are going to be lining the streets. They're going to be as close as they can possibly get, while still probably social distancing. But I think there's still going to be a sea of red, and I think it's going to look really special. People have to not shy away from the year and underplay it. I think we have to look at every race as bringing us something unique and special. And yes, we're having 2 races at Silverstone, and I believe the Styrian Grand Prix and all the title for Austria. And it's an interesting time, definitely. And it's the 70th anniversary one for Silverstone instead of being called like Silverstone 2. And I mean, we all know that quote from Christian Horner: Formula One in 2020 was going to be a very big year. So it's turning out that way, definitely.
Not in the way he intended that originally, but still it's going to be massive for the sport as well to see how everyone is dealing with this new very, very difficult times and with new policies and precautions in order to, you know, reduce the risk of being infected. Still, as you pointed out, I'm very curious to see how the crowd is going to react in Monza, even in the city. You know that the circuit is situated in a very big park. So some areas of the park will be accessible from the fans, from people. And I really think that it will be interesting to see if some events are organized, always following social distancing, but still it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, exciting is definitely the word for it. I mean, we're just 33 days away, I believe, from seeing our race, and it's
After
what we've all been waiting for.
not
We know
racing
it's
at
6
all.
months.
Indeed.
Yeah, 6 months, 6 months. I can't believe it's been 6 months since Abu Dhabi, where you were there, of course. You were there, I believe.
Absolutely. And I also left on the day which was the national celebration of the United Arab Emirates. So it was just a big party sparking at the airport. So I left the United Arab Emirates with a great send-off. Everyone was partying. There was such a cheerful atmosphere. And I would have never imagined that 3 months later I would be cancelling my trip to Bahrain, another Arabic country. So it was so special. It didn't feel weird at all, but then it strikes a lot once you look back and think at how huge was 6 months of season, basically, because the shutdown was 63 days long.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. The world is certainly ready to see what the races bring. And I think Max Verstappen is definitely going to be ready because there's every chance of him winning the first 3 races quite easily and leading the top of the title. What pressure would that put on the others if Verstappen does get the 3 at the start? What do we think will come next?
That would be massive. Also, because we are going to have all eyes on Vettel and Leclerc, how the internal Ferrari dynamics are going to be. So Max Verstappen might be the dark horse emerging out of the 3 first races, whereas Ferrari is going to go through a very, very hard time also with Vettel's send-off. What is going through his mind at no, but we certainly think that he really wants to prove himself. So I think that he will give everything he can to contrast his teammates, Mercedes, Red Bull, and it will be a lot of pressure for him. So I'm very curious to see how he's going to handle it.
But the sad thing is, of course, if the words of Charles are to be believed, Seb does not have a car underneath him that's really going to be able to deliver strong performances at the start of the season. They've admitted they're off the pace and they're not going to have much track running time to be able to get on the pace quickly. So this as well could show Sebastian's true racecraft. And I think he'll silence a few critics as well. I agree with you. I think he'll be right up near the front.
I truly hope we are right at this time, but still, as we have previously seen, he's not done very well in handling pressure recently. We obviously remember 2018, what happened. But I think that this time around it's going to be different because that's kind of his last shot.
But all along, we're forgetting the real dark horse, Valtteri Bottas, who I still think, and obviously Toto Wolff is expecting him to be a world champion as well with his comments recently. I think Bottas, with, his distance from social media, his kind of winter training camp that looks like something out of Rocky IV, with him just training in all conditions and running out in the snow, he is going to be ready to go when the season starts. He's got a superior teammate, of course, to be up against, but he's got the machine to do it. And I think he could have a fantastic first few races.
Yeah, obviously Mercedes had a great display in testing, also with the DAS system, which was very innovative. And
that was a long time ago.
I know, it was something that was a massive headache for other rivals. And with this system, with this spark of innovation, I believe that Bottas is getting the confidence he needs. Obviously, last year we saw Bottas being reborn basically after the winter time. He was bouncing back. He came up with that amazing and strong team radio, to whom it may concern, after he won in Australia. So I think that he's going to be one of the men to keep an eye on and watch out for as the season resumes. And being a shortened kind of season, I think it's something that can favor him on the short term, because obviously there is not much room for mistakes. And I think that he's a very good deliverer, even under pressure. So this might be one of his greatest chances, possibly.
Yeah, I think it's almost like the analogy of a footballer who, when they're running through on goal, if they don't have time to think about the shot, they normally score. When they have too long to think about it, that's when they do the wrong decision, they hit it wide, or the goalie gets it. With Bottas having these races coming like boom, 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 just so quick, it's just perform in the zone, perform again in the zone. And yeah, we could have a magnificent season. We've got so many stories of drivers that we are fully behind. We know that every bit of racing that we get is going to be so well received by everyone in motorsport that it's now just up to the drivers to show us what they can do. And that's why they're the best in the pinnacle of motorsport.
But what is your take on reverse grids? We've obviously seen that Mercedes and Racing Point stand against them. How do you see this perhaps being tested out in Austria?
Well, I was lucky enough to be able to ask the question to the three gentlemen in the press conference, and that got Sebastian Vettel saying that he thought it was bullshit when that was the idea posed. And that was with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel, because I said how, because they were first, second, and third for qualifying, that would be 20th, 19th, and 18th. And it was not well received by them at all, like we expected. So to hear Mercedes have put a kibosh on it doesn't surprise me at all. I think it undoes things like pole position record. We know when Lewis got the Senna helmet for beating the pole position record. And if you start playing around with history books like that, where does it stop?
Yeah, but I think that it's going to be a very atypical season, 2020. So that's the perfect timing to test out some new things, as Christian Horner did say. So I think that if we perhaps try twice, for example, in Austria number 2 and Silverstone number 2, there is pretty much going to be nothing to lose. Also because otherwise we're going to see a rough copy of the previous race. So it will be nice to upset things.
I think Formula One would benefit from that, though, because we know a lot of the criticism is it's the same race, the same winner, and things like that. If we have the same qualifying, and it actually does produce the same grid order in the second race at the same track. And then the race is something completely different because a first corner incident or a mechanic malfunction. It will show people, you know what, it's not as predictable as you think, and things do change. Or it could just be a bore fest and be exactly the same. But I think F1 needs to roll the dice and see what happens.
Yeah. And now, more than anything, they need to test out new things. Also, because we are entering, obviously, a new era with this COVID-19 thing, sparking a revolution pretty much within the teams, within new measures, rethinking the whole concept of paddock presence, what is necessary, what isn't necessary, how the spectacle is going to hit the fans, how people can be drawn into Formula One, because obviously we know that one of the ultimate targets of Liberty Media is attracting new fans. So how can they make this work? And obviously reverse grid is going to be one of the ways to go.
Well, I was always thinking for Netflix's season 3 of Drive to Survive, they're probably thinking, how are we going to make a show at the moment? Unless they're just clipping in Charles wearing a banana suit and Daniel Ricciardo doing some parkour. I mean, there's not many people in Formula One who haven't seen those video clips. So if Netflix does do a series, like they probably will, because I mean, it's printing money effectively, they'd be foolish not to. How will they be able to get their cameras to the track? Are they required personnel? Is there a place for them at the track? Or is the season going to go on hiatus?
I think that the interest is very high for that, also because Netflix has been pushing for it. It's been very well received from the fans and from the teams as well, at least the smaller teams, because it's very insightful. You know, it was key to the character building of Günther Steiner, who was obviously one of the most loved people, also by Trevor Noah, as we saw in Austin last year. So I think that they are going to be regarded as necessary personnel later in the year, though. Otherwise, they could rethink other ways to record things. For example, they would ask national TVs to record this for them, or do it via Zoom. For example, like a confession with a confession format for the drivers, asking very burning questions which are going to spark some controversies. That's how I see it. It's very weird, I know, but still they could be very, very creative. And they could show their interest.
That's a lovely idea. Yeah, I mean, don't ask Kimi Raikkonen because we all know it's just really a hobby for him. So no matter how burning the questions are, that would not get them much of a response. But I think if we do keep the races the same and we don't do a reverse grid, that's when we see what strategy really plays in Formula One, because they can't do the same strategy as they did the first race, because everyone would know when they're coming in for the pit stop, or they would know how they're going to do the tires and things. Obviously, the weather as well plays a part. Even a week's difference can play a part with weather. So I don't think they need to change too much. Let's just have the control experiment of same race condition, same qualifying, and hopefully get a completely different outcome.
Yes. But still, some races can be processions, as we saw previously. So it's going to be, you know, very hard in case the weather is the same. So I'm very open and in favor of at least a few changes and tweaks to the normal schedule, you know. But I somewhat agree with you. And we have a comment from Space Cowboy, who has been very active today with us. And also top drivers.
Yeah, hello, Space Cowboy.
With drivers that are used to fight in the middle, marshals will have to trade position on driving, which have been difficult as well in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really nice shout out for the marshals there. I mean, let's not forget, doing back-to-back races in Silverstone, they're going to be in more demand. It's going to have more of an impact on them. And of course, they have a passion for it. And of course, they love it. But we can't underplay the sacrifice of the marshals giving up all that time, because they are volunteers. And without marshals, we do not have motorsport. Never mind COVID-19, never mind government proposals and regulations. Without race marshals volunteering their time, we don't go racing.
Perhaps this will act as a change for marshals, and they, as much as their volunteering spirit, they will get some rewards, for example, as a symbol of their commitment.
That would be really nice. I mean, the 70th year being celebrated at Silverstone. It'd be nice to see if they're celebrating the marshals as well in such a way, because they don't have many people in attendance who they can make a fuss of. So maybe they will do something for the marshals. Who knows? But what will be for me the most spectacular looking race on television has to be Spa-Francorchamps, being
Absolutely.
dwarfed by the forest. You do not need fans in the grandstand when you have the beautiful surroundings of those forests. I think that's going to be the standout race of the first 8 for me.
Yeah, I agree with you also because, the scenes from the Styrian and the landscape are going to be extremely beautiful and pleasing to the eye. So obviously, we're really looking forward to seeing that because on-track action there is extremely compelling for the fans, even though it doesn't matter if you are there in person or watching at home, it's going to be always a pleasure racing wise and also landscape wise as you are looking at the whole landscape. So it's going to be beautiful and probably the best looking race. But still, we are yet to see whether the Singapore Grand Prix is confirmed, Abu Dhabi as well, because despite the lack of on-track action and overtakes in Abu Dhabi, I do think that's one of the top players on the calendar in terms of
The
looks.
the Singapore Grand Prix will only go ahead if the fans can go. And the way that Singapore is with the new cases, sadly, still coming on a daily basis, it looks very unlikely that fans will be in attendance. And the Singapore officials have made it very clear they cannot destabilize all of Singapore by shutting down the whole area for a
Exactly.
race without the fans being able to be in attendance.
Yeah, that was
Because
one
not
of the
only the
main
financial
points.
loss, yeah,
That was one
they've
of
got
the
the
main
financial loss, but they've also
points. No, because actually I was reading an article and it was talking about in case the situation worsens, how are they going to make way for the ambulances in case people need to receive medical attention. Also, some metro stations are going to be completely shut down and closed to the people. So regular transport is not going to be guaranteed. So that's an issue as well.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of factors, which is why we're not at all surprised that Monaco was so quick to say we're not in this year. Many people thought it was because of COVID-19, and lots of people were criticizing, saying, "Oh, they're just thinking about the illness and things." But it was so much more than that. They realized the principality would be so disrupted that it just doesn't warrant the effort and the money and the disturbance that it brings. As brilliant as Formula One racing is, there are certainly more important things.
That was an issue as well with the transport, just like we said in Singapore, and a problem of logistics in terms of swapping dates, finding a new date for rescheduling the race. They had the same problem with Formula E as well and other historic races. So there was so much more into that, as you said, that made it impossible for F1 and Monaco to reach an agreement in 2020, which is obviously unfortunate. But that really shows what goes behind the organization of a whole event as big as the Monaco Grand Prix. That's just
Yeah.
not pure racing. That's a whole new level of sectors involved.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's not just a party at the Amber Lounge. It's a lot more than that.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are just side effects and side consequences of the race, which are not necessary to the races, but they just add something to it, of course.
And what's really nice is the fact that Formula 2 and Formula 3 are also being invited to the party, as they quite rightly should be, because with so much of a young generation, sometimes they get 2 years, 3 years to be able to show their potential. And had they had a whole year out of the spotlight, out of sponsors, I think it's wonderful that F2 and F3 are going to be there. So well done to all involved.
Yes, absolutely. That is going to be like a MotoGP race as it would normally go with Moto2 and Moto3. So all the feeder categories taking part and showing their great on-track action during the weekend, which is going to add some extra value to the whole race, and it's going to give meaning to the whole motorsport community because we obviously have these youngsters who were eager to jump in the car and show what they were made of, but still they were obviously quarantine as everyone. So if we're not going to foster the new generations in terms of on-track action, training and practice, we couldn't even allow Formula One to actually start the season. So it's very good that they are doing it on every level.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And of course, the fact that F2's champion and where they move on to, and F3's champion and where they move on to. But I think what we're going to get above all else is record viewing figures for a free practice one for Formula One. I mean, yeah. every race fan is going to be tuning into that. And so I think one or two people might be having a late start at work on that day, because we have waited over 6 months to see cars actually getting at it. And it's going to be a magnificent weekend. And we're 33 days away from race day. Fantastic.
And what is most striking for me is that everyone is going to watch FP1. Oh my gosh, the bells in my town. But still, yes, it's going to be massive, because there is not going to be such a difficult timing for European fans as Australia, which is normally the season opener. So being Austria, the venue of the first two races, this is going to be massive for the audience and for people tuning in. So that was obviously the best choice they could ever take for resuming the season, I think.
Yeah, very much so. So to conclude our podcast, we have the Renault seat still waiting to be claimed. What's your money on? Who's it going to?
I was going to say Alonso, but still there is so much more involved. You know how I think. You know how I think it's going to pan out, but still, I would see Bottas in case the whole Aston Martin Daimler dynamics become a reality.
Yeah.
I see Bottas genuinely moving there to Renault and becoming the new face of the team, at least for the first year, and then he's going to battle it out with Ocon for the top spots. But I think that if he's moving there, the team is going to rely on him for the first year, also because they need a backbone.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, the experience that he brings is certainly very clear, and we're not going to have an answer. Renault have said very clearly, we are not going to know until we are racing again. So what story do you predict coming our way in the next 33 days? What's going to be the thing that we're all writing about? What's going to catch us off guard?
Regarding Renault, I don't know. I think they are mostly going to remain silent, but we perhaps can see some movement within the back of the grid as for contracts. As we know that Haas is on the lookout for new drivers. We still have Russell, whose contractual situation is still not sorted. So I think that some adjustments are going to be made within the next 33 days, but nothing major. So for Renault, we are going to wait a little bit more, at least for September.
There'll be enough for us to write about still. That's good. There'll be enough for us to write about.
Absolutely, because
for inviting me to talk.
Well, sorry, I didn't understand that. There was a problem with the audio.
I was just saying thank you so much for inviting me to talk with you again. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks to all who took their time to listen to us and join in the discussion. Thank you very much, Space Cowboy, Absolutely. Our last person we heard from.
It was a pleasure for myself as well, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to you within the next 33 days, as we have lots of preparation and stories to write about the upcoming season, which is obviously becoming reality and coming together. I was extremely joyful following today's announcement regarding a draft calendar, because there's been a lot of uproar concerning the news. People who were not optimistic towards the actual season resuming. So it's very nice to hear and to see that it's coming together.
Yeah, very much. And Simon Brooks, thank you very much for your candle emoji. We enjoyed speaking with you, and we will stay safe. And we all remember Bruce McLaren 50 years ago today, and the huge impact he had on Formula One. And we think of Lewis Hamilton and the huge impact he has on Formula One. And indeed, with our platform, we say, like everyone else, Black Lives Matter. Thanks for your time, B.
Thank you. See you next week.
Bye.